The life of Jesus emerges as a multifaceted narrative drawn from a rich array of sources, encompassing the foundational Jewish scriptures that foreshadow his role, the canonical accounts that form the core of Christian doctrine, apocryphal expansions that delve into untold episodes, historical attestations from non-religious chroniclers, and an array of legends and theories that speculate on enigmatic periods and outcomes. These elements collectively portray a figure whose existence and actions have shaped religious, cultural, and philosophical landscapes across millennia. The Jewish scriptures, structured as the Tanakh with its divisions of Torah, prophets, and writings, provide prophetic anticipations of a messianic deliverer, while the Christian Old Testament reorganizes these texts to emphasize fulfillment in a new covenant. Apocryphal texts, emerging centuries later, add layers of miraculous detail, often reflecting devotional creativity rather than historical precision, and legends further extend the story into realms of speculation, blending myth with theology. Canonical Gospels present a cohesive though varied depiction, focusing on ministry, teachings, and redemptive acts, whereas apocryphal Gospels explore infancy wonders and esoteric dialogues, and historical references affirm basic events like execution under Roman authority. Theories of marriage, progeny, travels, and survival post-execution introduce controversial dimensions, drawing from Gnostic insights and modern interpretations of ancient fragments. In other religious traditions, such as Islam, Jesus appears as a revered prophet with miraculous abilities, aligning partially with Christian narratives but diverging on key doctrines. This synthesis reveals a life story that transcends singular interpretation, inviting examination of how diverse accounts converge and conflict to construct an enduring legacy. The narrative unfolds chronologically, integrating these sources to create a comprehensive portrayal, acknowledging where accounts derive from legend or theory. From pre-birth prophecies to post-resurrection apparitions and beyond, the story encompasses miraculous births, childhood exploits, public teachings, trials, and speculative extensions, illustrating the profound impact of this figure on human history and belief systems. Pre-birth and genealogical foundations. The Jewish scriptures establish a profound anticipation for a messianic redeemer, embedding prophecies that delineate the characteristics and mission of this figure within a framework of divine covenant and human history. Texts such as Isaiah articulate a suffering servant who endures affliction to atone for the transgressions of others, a motif that resonates with themes of sacrificial redemption central to later interpretations. Micah specifies a birthplace in Bethlehem, envisioning a ruler whose origins trace back to ancient days, while other prophetic writings like those in Zechariah and Daniel evoke images of a humble king and a celestial son of man bestowed with eternal authority. Organized as the Tanakh, these scriptures divide into the Torah, which narrates foundational laws and the exodus from bondage, the Nevi'im, chronicling prophetic exhortations toward fidelity and warnings of exile, and the Ketuvim, offering poetic reflections on suffering, wisdom, and divine providence. This structure not only preserves the historical journey of Israel but also underscores recurring motifs of kingship and restoration, which subsequent traditions link to Jesus as the embodiment of these promises, fulfilling a lineage promised to David and Abraham. Genealogical emphases in these scriptures highlight a royal and covenantal heritage, with lineages meticulously traced to underscore legitimacy and divine selection. Variations in presentation, such as backward tracing through paternal figures like Joseph or comprehensive forward progressions from Adam, serve theological purposes, emphasizing continuity with patriarchal promises rather than mere chronological accuracy. Such records affirm a descent from key biblical patriarchs, reinforcing the messianic role as a branch from Jesse's stump, as Isaiah describes. In this context, the scriptures function as a blueprint for expectation, where the Messiah is envisioned as both a conqueror of oppression and a bearer of peace, drawing from the law's ethical mandates and the prophet's calls for justice. These elements collectively form a narrative arc that prepares for a figure who integrates human ancestry with divine intervention, setting the stage for interpretations that see fulfillment in specific historical events. Apocryphal narratives extend this foundational prelude by elaborating on the maternal lineage, introducing detailed episodes that enhance the aura of divine predestination. Accounts in the Proto-Evangelium of James describe Mary's own miraculous conception to the barren Joachim and Anna, her birth around 20 BCE, and her early dedication to temple service at age 3, where she resides until adolescence. Her betrothal to Joseph, portrayed as an elderly widower, occurs around ages 12 to 14, with angelic interventions ensuring her perpetual virginity and role in the divine plan. These stories, while not canonical, reflect early devotional efforts to sanctify origins, portraying Mary as a vessel of purity selected through providential signs. Theoretical parallels to ancient mythologies, such as the virgin births of Perseus conceived by Zeus's golden reign or Horus born to Isis without Osiris's physical presence, suggest archetypal influences where heroes arise from supernatural unions, symbolizing triumph over mortal limitations and reflecting cross-cultural motifs of divine incarnation. In broader religious traditions, Islamic accounts further diversify the pre-birth narrative, depicting Jesus's conception through God's direct word to Mary, without human father, emphasizing his status as a prophet from the moment of inception. Born under a palm tree that miraculously bears fruit and provides shade, this version aligns with timelines estimating conception in 8 to 6 BCE, intertwining divine purpose with human expectation. Historical contexts, including Roman censuses and Herodian rule, ground these events in a turbulent era, where prophecies and legends converge to portray a life predestined for transformative impact. Together, these sources weave a prelude rich in anticipation, where scriptural prophecies, apocryphal elaborations, and comparative motifs coalesce to frame a genealogy not merely of blood but of divine election, preparing for a narrative that bridges ancient promises with unfolding revelation. Nativity and infancy. The Nativity unfolds around 4 BCE in Bethlehem, with canonical Gospels recounting a virgin conception by the Holy Spirit, fulfilling prophecies of a sign to the house of David. Angelic announcements herald the event to shepherds in the fields, proclaiming peace on earth, while a star guides wise men, or magi, from the east bearing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, symbolizing kingship, divinity, and mortality. The setting in a manger stems from a census-mandated journey, underscoring humble beginnings amid imperial decree. Herod's subsequent massacre of innocents prompts a flight to Egypt, echoing the Exodus motif and protecting the child from tyrannical threat. These elements integrate scriptural foreshadowing, such as Rachel's weeping in Jeremiah, with historical plausibility under Herodian paranoia, creating a narrative of divine protection amid peril. Apocryphal details vividly enrich the birth scene, locating it in a cave where midwives attest to Mary's post-birth virginity, as detailed in the Proto-Evangelium of James and Gospel of Pseudo-Matthew. Jesus, as a newborn, speaks from the cradle to affirm his mother's purity and performs healings, per the Arabic infancy gospel, manifesting early prophetic power. During the flight, ages 0 to 2, legendary accounts depict him taming dragons and wild animals that bow in reverence, commanding a palm tree to lower its branches for sustenance, and miraculously compressing the journey's duration. These wonders blend themes of dominion over creation with symbolic guardianship, suggesting influences from cultural tales where divine children command nature, akin to young Krishna subduing serpents or Apollo slaying Python. Upon returning to Nazareth after Herod's death, infancy proceeds with ritual observances, circumcision at 8 days, naming, and temple presentation, where Simeon and Anna prophesy his role as light to Gentiles and redemption for Israel. Islamic narratives contribute by describing Jesus animating clay birds and speaking as an infant, reinforcing his miraculous nature as a sign from God. Theoretical extensions posit early mystical exposures in Egypt, perhaps drawing from Hermetic traditions or parallels to Asclepius, the healing god born of divine union, who masters medicine from youth. Such speculations fill narrative gaps, portraying an infancy where divine essence emerges through acts that transcend ordinary human development, foreshadowing a ministry of restoration. These interwoven accounts transform the nativity and infancy into a symphony of wonder, where canonical humility meets apocryphal spectacle, and comparative motifs amplify universal themes of sacred birth. Historical references, like Josephus's mentions of Herodian atrocities, lend credence to the peril, while legends underscore a protected trajectory. In this phase, the child embodies prophetic fulfillment, with each miracle and escape affirming a destiny intertwined with salvation history, setting foundations for later revelations of identity and purpose. Childhood and adolescence. From ages 2 to 12, apocryphal narratives predominate, illustrating a childhood in Nazareth filled with extraordinary displays of power. At 5, Jesus shapes 12 sparrows from clay on the Sabbath, animating them with a clap to fly away when confronted, asserting mastery over creation and challenging ritual laws. He curses a boy disrupting his water pools, leading to withering and death, and strikes another dead for a mere collision, though he revives some following parental admonition, as chronicled in the infancy Gospel of Thomas. These episodes reveal an impulsive divinity, contrasting with later emphases on compassion, and echo folkloric archetypes of wild children in myths, such as young Hermes stealing cattle or Bacchus's vengeful axe. Ages 6 to 8 bring domestic miracles, fetching water unbroken in his cloak after shattering a pitcher, elongating a short beam to aid Joseph's carpentry, and curing brother James of a venomous snake bite. At 8, he curses an overzealous teacher into fainting or demise, yet commends a subsequent instructor for recognizing his innate wisdom. Raising a deceased boy named Zeno, accused of being pushed from a roof, Jesus commands testimony to his innocence, blending resurrection with vindication. Legends infer influences from Essene asceticism or Pharisaic legal debates, potentially shaping his ethical framework amid Galilean rural life. Culminating at 12, Canonical Luke recounts Jesus lingering in the Jerusalem temple during Passover, engaging elders with profound scriptural insights that astonish them, while Apocryphal echoes position this as a pinnacle of youthful prowess. Theoretical propositions for this period include early marital or familial considerations, with unsubstantiated suggestions of unions to figures like Mary of Bethany or Magdalene, drawing from later Gnostic intimations. Comparative mythology aligns these feats with Horace's youthful confrontations against Set or Prometheus's creative defiance, where divine progeny exhibit precocity that foreshadows cosmic roles. This childhood and adolescence phase, dominated by apocryphal vigor, constructs a portrait of emerging godhood within human constraints, where miracles serve as harbingers of mission. Canonical restraint highlights growth in wisdom, while legends speculate communal influences, enriching the narrative with layers of wonder and speculation. Together, these accounts bridge infancy's protections to ministry's calls, portraying a trajectory guided by inherent authority and scriptural depth. The hidden years. The period spanning ages 12 to 30 in Jesus' life is characterized by a notable absence of detailed accounts in the canonical Gospels, which offer only brief mentions of his development in Nazareth. These sources describe a time of quiet growth in wisdom, stature, and favor with both God and people, suggesting a normal upbringing in a modest Jewish household. Likely assisting his earthly father Joseph in carpentry, Jesus would have engaged in the daily rhythms of Galilean village life, including observance of Jewish customs such as Sabbath synagogue attendance and festival pilgrimages to Jerusalem. This silence in the primary texts has fueled extensive speculation, as it leaves a significant gap between his precocious temple discussion at age 12 and the commencement of his public ministry. Apocryphal narratives provide subtle hints of continued minor miracles during these years, implying an ongoing manifestation of divine abilities that remained private or unrecorded, perhaps to emphasize the humility of his human experience before his messianic revelation. Legends and theories abound to fill this void, often portraying Jesus as an itinerant seeker of wisdom beyond Judea. One prominent narrative, derived from the forged 19th century work The Life of Saint Isa by Nicholas Notovich, claims travels to India and Tibet, where he studied under Buddhist and Hindu gurus, absorbing teachings from the Vedas and influencing Eastern philosophies. Debunked as a hoax due to the absence of supporting manuscripts and scholarly verification, this account nevertheless blends Jesus' story with bodhisattva archetypes, envisioning him as an enlightened figure traversing Persia and Kashmir, engaging in debates and healings that parallel Siddhartha's path to enlightenment. Such theories suggest a synthesis of religious ideas, where Jesus' later emphasis on compassion and inner kingdom might stem from these exposures, though they lack historical substantiation and contradict the localized focus of canonical depictions. Alternative views introduce personal and relational dimensions, positing marriage and family during this era. Some speculate a union with Mary Magdalene, potentially resulting in children, drawing from symbolic Gnostic references to companionship and later bloodline legends. Time spent with John the Baptist as a mentor is another hypothesis, implying immersion in ascetic practices along the Jordan, preparing for his baptizing role. Islamic traditions describe learning from desert hermits, aligning with prophetic solitude in wilderness settings. These ideas reflect attempts to humanize the figure, portraying him as navigating typical life stages like relationships and mentorship, while still under divine oversight, shaping his revolutionary leanings against Roman occupation and religious establishment. Comparative elements from mythology further enrich these speculations, drawing parallels to Orpheus's journeys through underworlds and lands for esoteric knowledge, or Mithras' initiations in mystery cults involving bulls and celestial ascents. Historical contexts situate him firmly in Galilee amid Roman rule, where economic hardships and political tensions likely influenced his emerging views on justice and the kingdom. The occupation's tax burdens and cultural Hellenization may have fostered his critiques of authority, blending personal free will with divine guidance to follow Jewish traditions. Ultimately, this enigmatic phase underscores the tension between human agency and providential direction, where Jesus chose to embrace scriptural prophecies while legends imagine broader horizons, all converging toward his public emergence as a transformative teacher. Ministry initiation and early acts. The initiation of Jesus' public ministry around age 30, dated to approximately 26 to 28 CE, begins with his baptism by John in the Jordan River, a pivotal event marked by divine affirmation through the descent of the Holy Spirit as a dove and a voice declaring sonship. This moment signifies the commencement of his messianic role, fulfilling prophetic expectations from Isaiah of an anointed servant. Following baptism, a 40-day period of temptation in the wilderness ensues, where Jesus resists Satan's offers of power, bread, and protection by quoting scriptures from Deuteronomy, demonstrating reliance on divine word over worldly allure. These trials echo mythological struggles, such as Zoroaster's confrontations with evil spirits, but emphasize Jesus' voluntary alignment with God's will through free will and faith. Early acts include the miracle at the wedding in Cana, where Jesus transforms water into wine at his mother's urging, symbolizing abundance and new covenant joy, with echoes of Dionysus's wine associations in Greek mythology. He then calls his first disciples, fishermen like Peter, Andrew, James, and John, inviting them to become fishers of people, initiating a community of followers. Healings commence, such as restoring a paralytic or a centurion's servant, and teachings unfold, including the Sermon on the Mount with its beatitudes blessing the poor in spirit and peacemakers, reinterpreting Torah laws to focus on inner righteousness. These elements draw from Jewish traditions, where Jesus positions himself as fulfilling prophecies like Isaiah's light to the nations. Apocryphal expansions enrich this phase with secret sayings preserved in the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of 114 logia emphasizing gnosis, such as, "The kingdom is inside you and outside you," or "Split a piece of wood, and I am there," promoting inner enlightenment over external rituals. Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Philip describe an intimate companionship with Mary Magdalene, portraying Jesus kissing her often as a symbol of spiritual union and favoring her with teachings, which stirs jealousy among male disciples. These narratives suggest esoteric dimensions to his ministry, where hidden knowledge complements public parables, aligning with theories of mystical influences from Essene or Qumran communities. Comparative myths link his healings to Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine whose temples hosted curative rituals, or Mithras' initiatory ceremonies involving rebirth and communal meals. In Galilean teachings, parables like the Good Samaritan illustrate mercy across ethnic divides, while miracles such as feeding 5,000 with loaves and fishes or walking on water affirm dominion over nature, fulfilling prophetic signs like Elijah's multiplications. The Transfiguration on a mountain, where Moses and Elijah appear and God reaffirms sonship, bridges Old Testament law and prophecy with Jesus' role, influencing his resolve amid growing opposition. This early ministry phase, guided by divine direction yet exercised through free will, sets the foundation for broader impacts, blending scriptural fidelity with innovative interpretations. Later ministry and Judean phase. Ages 31 to 33 encompass intensified travels and teachings, shifting focus to Judea with acts like raising Lazarus from death in Bethany, a miracle that heightens tensions by demonstrating power over mortality, fulfilling Ezekiel's Valley of Dry Bones prophecy. Parables on the kingdom, such as the vineyard workers or wedding banquet, emphasize God's inclusive grace, while end times discourses on the Mount of Olives warn of tribulations and the Son of Man's return, drawing from Daniel's visions. These elements reflect influences from Jewish apocalyptic traditions, possibly shaped by Essene writings discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls, underscoring urgency in his message amid Roman oppression. Apocryphal texts like the Gospel of Mary feature post-resurrection visions granted to Mary Magdalene, where Jesus imparts secret teachings on the soul's ascent, met with doubt from apostles like Peter, highlighting gender dynamics in early communities. The Gnostic Apocryphon of John reveals dialogues on cosmology, portraying creation through emanations and the role of salvation in overcoming material entrapment, with Jesus as a revealer of divine truths. These expansions suggest a layered ministry, where public proclamations coexist with private esoteric instructions, aligning with theories of hidden knowledge traditions akin to Platonic or Hermetic philosophies. Friction with religious and political authorities escalates, culminating in Judas's betrayal, apocryphally depicted in the Gospel of Judas as a requested act to liberate Jesus' spirit from the body, portraying the Old Testament God as a malevolent demiurge in Gnostic theology. This narrative inverts canonical views of treachery, suggesting a collaborative divine plan. Comparative elements echo Mesopotamian Tammuz's betrayal leading to underworld descent, or Greek Adonis's seasonal death and rebirth tied to fertility cycles, illustrating archetypal patterns of sacrifice and renewal in Jesus' story. As opposition mounts, Jesus' actions, cleansing the temple, predicting its destruction, provoke arrests and trials, weaving together scriptural fulfillments like Zechariah's pierced one with historical realities of Roman executions. This phase, motivated by compassion and divine mission, blends free will in confronting injustice with guidance from prayer and spirit, shaping a legacy of ethical reform and redemptive hope. The Judean emphasis intensifies messianic claims, setting the stage for climactic events that resonate across traditions. Passion and crucifixion. The Passion narrative commences with the betrayal by Judas Iscariot, a pivotal act that sets in motion the final events leading to the crucifixion. In the canonical Gospels, Judas identifies Jesus with a kiss in the Garden of Gethsemane, receiving 30 pieces of silver as payment from the religious authorities. This betrayal parallels themes of close companionship turning to treachery, as foretold in Psalms, where a trusted friend lifts his heel against the protagonist. The Last Supper precedes this, where Jesus institutes the Eucharist, breaking bread and sharing wine as symbols of his body and blood, a ritual that echoes Mithraic meals in ancient mystery religions, involving communal bread and wine to signify divine communion and sacrifice. Such parallels suggest cultural exchanges in the Roman world, though the Eucharistic act in Christian tradition emphasizes remembrance of impending death and covenant renewal, drawing from Passover Seder elements in Jewish practice. Following the supper, Jesus retreats to Gethsemane for prayer, agonizing over the cup of suffering, submitting to divine will with the words, "Not my will, but yours be done." This moment of human vulnerability highlights the tension between free will and divine guidance, portraying Jesus as fully engaged in the human experience while aligned with a higher purpose. His arrest follows, with disciples fleeing as prophesied, and trials ensue before the Sanhedrin and Pontius Pilate. The Jewish council accuses him of blasphemy for claiming divinity, while Pilate, the Roman prefect, questions his kingship, ultimately yielding to the crowd's demands despite finding no fault. Historical references corroborate this execution around 30 CE, with Josephus describing a wise teacher condemned by Pilate at the instigation of leading Jews, and Tacitus confirming the event under Tiberius's reign, noting it as the origin of the Christian sect suppressed by Nero. The crucifixion at Golgotha unfolds with Jesus nailed to the cross between thieves, enduring mockery and physical torment. Canonical accounts detail the darkness from noon to 3, the temple veil tearing, and an earthquake, symbolizing cosmic disruption and access to the divine. Non-biblical attestations from Thallus and Phlegon interpret this darkness as a solar eclipse, though timing during Passover's full moon suggests a supernatural phenomenon. Apocryphal expansions in the Gospel of Peter add fantastical elements, such as giants emerging from the tomb and a talking cross affirming resurrection, while the Gospel of Nicodemus elaborates on the trial with Pilate's reluctance and a descent to hell, where Jesus harrows the underworld, freeing righteous souls like Adam and defeating death's powers. Further historical insights include Pliny the Younger's letters mentioning Christians worshipping Jesus as a god, refusing to curse him under persecution, Suetonius alluding to disturbances under Claudius over Chrestus, likely referring to early Christian conflicts, Lucian's satire mocking followers of a crucified sophist, and Mara bar Serapian's philosophical letter referencing a wise Jewish king executed unjustly by his people. Talmudic references portray the execution for sorcery and leading Israel astray, executed on Passover Eve, aligning with gospel timelines but from a critical Jewish perspective. These sources collectively affirm the historical reality of the crucifixion, while apocryphal and legendary layers add theological depth, portraying it as a victory over evil rather than defeat. Resurrection and post-resurrection. The resurrection narrative begins with the discovery of the empty tomb on the third day, where women, led by Mary Magdalene as the first witness, encounter angelic figures announcing the rising. Canonical Gospels detail her initial confusion, mistaking the risen Jesus for a gardener, before recognition and the command to inform the disciples. Appearances follow to the apostles, including on the Emmaus Road where he explains scriptures concerning himself, and to Thomas, who doubts until touching wounds. Over 500 witnesses are cited, emphasizing communal validation of the event as a cornerstone of faith. 40 days of post-resurrection teachings ensue, where Jesus expounds on the kingdom, commissions the great mission to all nations, and promises the Holy Spirit's coming. The Ascension concludes this period, with him lifted into heaven as disciples watch, fulfilling prophecies of exaltation. Apocryphal texts like the Gospel of Bartholomew include extended dialogues on mysteries of creation and salvation, while Pistis Sophia offers esoteric instructions on cosmic structures and redemption paths, reflecting Gnostic emphases on hidden knowledge. The Gospel of Truth presents poetic reflections on redemption as errors correction through divine revelation. In Islamic perspectives, the crucifixion is an appearance only, with God raising Jesus alive to heaven without death, positioning him as a prophet who will return to defeat the Antichrist, break crosses symbolizing false doctrines, and kill swine to enforce monotheism. This view aligns with apocryphal themes of illusion but diverges on soteriology, seeing Jesus as a messenger rather than divine savior. Legends and theories propose survival alternatives. Swoon hypotheses suggest fainting on the cross, revival in the tomb with essences like aloe and myrrh, and migration to France with Mary Magdalene, living as a hermit in Provence and fathering Sarah, whose bloodline leads to Merovingian kings, a hoax popularized in Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Eastern theories depict travel to Kashmir as Yuz Asaf, marrying locally with descendants, buried in Srinagar per Ahmadiyya traditions. Gnostic texts like the Second Treatise of Great Seth mock the crucifixion as an illusion suffered by a substitute, with the true Christ laughing above. Comparative mythology notes echoes in Osiris's revival by Isis, or Attis and Adonis's seasonal renewals, though scholars highlight differences. No bodily resurrection in myths, versus the Gospel's emphasis on physical continuity and empty tomb. Legacy and comparative dimensions. The legacy of Jesus profoundly influences Christianity as its central figure, embodying divine incarnation, sacrificial atonement, and resurrection hope, shaping doctrines from Trinity to sacraments. In Islam, he is revered as Prophet Isa, performing miracles like healing the blind and raising the dead, born of a virgin, but not crucified or divine, with a future role in eschatology. Comparative mythology identifies parallels. Dionysus's vine and wine transformations akin to Cana's miracle, Sol Invictus's sun imagery reflecting resurrection on Sunday, Hermes as shepherd mirroring the Good Shepherd parable. Theories of mythological borrowing are dismissed by scholars, asserting Gospel's roots in Jewish monotheism and historical events, not pagan syncretism. Apocryphal texts' exclusion from canons arises from late 2nd to 6th century dates, pseudonymous claims to apostolic authorship, and doctrinal inconsistencies like Gnostic dualism or legendary excesses. Despite this, they shaped art, such as medieval depictions of infancy miracles, and liturgy, influencing feasts like the Assumption of Mary derived from proto-evangelium details. Their preservation through manuscripts, like Nag Hammadi codices or recent fragments, underscores value as artifacts of early diversity, though not inspired scripture. Historical consensus affirms Jesus' existence, baptism by John, and crucifixion under Pilate, supported by Josephus's dual mentions, wise man and James's brother, Tacitus's execution note, and Pliny's worship descriptions. Legends persist culturally. Da Vinci Code popularizes bloodline conspiracies with Priory of Chaon hoaxes. Rennes-le-Château clues hint at hidden treasures or tombs linked to Magdalene's exile. Eastern survivals claim tombs in Japan or Kashmir, blending with local folklore. This expanded account weaves prophecy fulfillment from Genesis's promised seed to Malachi's messenger, through miracles, teachings, and sacrifice, into an enduring mystery. Transcending sources, it embodies universal themes of redemption, divinity, and human aspiration, where canonical truths intersect apocryphal wonders, historical facts, and theoretical explorations to form a narrative of profound spiritual resonance. Conclusion: the expanded life of Jesus. Canonical, apocryphal, legendary, and theoretical accounts. The life of Jesus, as reconstructed from the full spectrum of sources examined in this study, presents a profoundly layered and enduring narrative that bridges ancient Jewish prophecy, early Christian testimony, apocryphal elaboration, historical attestation, and centuries of speculative legend. The Tanakh's prophetic framework, from the suffering servant of Isaiah to the Davidic king of Micah and the pierced one of Zechariah, establishes the theological horizon within which the canonical Gospels locate Jesus' identity and mission. These texts portray a figure born of Jewish lineage, raised in the traditions of Torah and synagogue, whose teachings, miracles, and death are presented as the deliberate fulfillment of scriptural promises. The New Testament Gospels, while varying in emphasis and detail, converge on a ministry of proclamation, healing, and confrontation with religious and political authorities, culminating in crucifixion under Pontius Pilate and resurrection appearances that anchor Christian faith in a transformed relationship between God and humanity. Apocryphal Gospels and related writings, though excluded from the canon for reasons of late composition, pseudonymous authorship, and doctrinal divergence, enrich this portrait with imaginative expansions that address narrative silences. The infancy accounts in the Proto-Evangelium of James, Infancy Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Pseudo-Matthew, and Arabic Infancy Gospel supply stories of miraculous birth, protective journeys, childhood wonders, and precocious displays of power, sometimes benevolent, sometimes severe, that reflect early devotional creativity and the desire to affirm divine presence from the earliest moments of life. Gnostic texts such as the Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Philip, and Gospel of Mary introduce esoteric teachings, symbolic intimacy with Mary Magdalene, and post-resurrection dialogues that emphasize hidden knowledge and spiritual union, offering alternative lenses through which early communities interpreted the significance of Jesus. Historical references from non-Christian sources, Josephus's mention of a wise teacher executed by Pilate and brother of James, Tacitus's record of crucifixion under Tiberius, Pliny's description of Christians worshipping Christ as a god, Suetonius's allusion to disturbances over Chrestus, Lucian's satirical mockery of a crucified sophist, and Mara bar Serapian's reference to a wise Jewish king unjustly killed, corroborate the existence of Jesus and the rapid emergence of a movement centered on his execution and claimed resurrection. These external attestations, though sparse and often polemical, provide independent confirmation of key events and the social impact of his followers, situating the narrative within the broader historical context of first-century Roman Judea. Beyond these primary and secondary sources, a constellation of legends and theories has accumulated over centuries, filling perceived gaps and projecting alternative trajectories. Speculative accounts of Jesus traveling to India or Tibet during the lost years, marrying Mary Magdalene, fathering children who migrated to France, or surviving crucifixion to live and die in Kashmir reflect a persistent human impulse to extend the story into realms of mystery, lineage, and cross-cultural exchange. These narratives, often rooted in medieval folklore, 19th-century forgeries, or 20th-century reinterpretations of Gnostic fragments, have influenced art, literature, and popular imagination even as they lack historical substantiation. Their persistence demonstrates the cultural potency of Jesus as a figure capable of absorbing and refracting diverse symbolic meanings. Ultimately, the comprehensive portrait that emerges is one of profound continuity and creative divergence. The Jewish scriptures supply the prophetic architecture, the canonical Gospels the central narrative of ministry and redemptive sacrifice, the apocryphal texts the imaginative elaboration of infancy and esoteric insight, the historical references the minimal but crucial external validation, and the legends the ongoing human effort to explore what remains untold. Together, these strands reveal a life story that has proven remarkably adaptable, capable of sustaining orthodox doctrine, devotional wonder, scholarly inquiry, and speculative reinterpretation across 2 millennia. Whether viewed as the fulfillment of ancient promises, a historical teacher executed by Rome, a divine child of legend, or the subject of enduring myth, the figure of Jesus continues to compel attention, reflection, and debate, embodying the intersection of history, faith, and imagination in ways that remain as vital and contested today as they were in the first century.